Hello and welcome into the Fat Guy Podcast. I am the Fat Guy. Most people call me Brett, but I'll answer to just about anything. So this podcast is my effort to basically share my weight loss and health journey. None of this is medical advice, and you shouldn't interpret it as a medical advice. That's what doctors are for. Nevertheless, I think I have something to offer, especially to people who are lifelong overweight, especially to people who have 50 or more pounds to lose, 100 pounds, 150. What are my credentials? Well, I don't really have any. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy that's tried every kind of diet that there is. I've had success on some. I've had my most success recently on the ketogenic diet. So much success, and it feels so great, in fact, that I know that I'll never be a weight gain person again. Now, I don't know how low my weight will get, but so far I've lost about 110 pounds. Yes, about 110 pounds. But I still have weight to lose, and I don't know how much. Anywhere between 50 and 100 more pounds. I'll know when I get there. I'm a very tall person, 6'4". So, you know, all the big calculators say I should be in the 190s or 180s or something, but I really think I would be exceptionally gaunt at 180 or 190. I'm thinking 2 to 225 is probably about as small as I can go. Nevertheless, I'm happy with the 110-pound weight loss, and I'll know when I get to the weight I should be at when I get there. So I do a ketogenic diet. We'll talk about that briefly. What is a ketogenic diet? A ketogenic diet is most closely related to the Atkins diet. So most everybody knows low carb. You've probably heard that. The ketogenic diet differs in Atkins in that you eat a moderate amount of protein rather than a really high amount of protein. So Atkins is low carb and high protein. A ketogenic diet is low carb as well, but you have a moderate amount of protein and you eat a high amount of fat. So why is that significant? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Fat is the only thing that you can eat that has zero effect on blood sugar. It has near zero insulin response. So it's nearly impossible to put anything in your mouth that doesn't trigger insulin because your body assumes there's something coming that needs insulin. So fat is as close to zero as you can get on that. On the other hand, it is zero as far as sugar goes, a sugar response. And if you've listened to previous podcasts, you know that the secret to losing weight is to keep insulin low. Everybody is always, it's so funny to me that now that I know the answer, and I look back over all the years of my life, and I can't tell you how many times I had this discussion with people. Either people who I was, worked with or related to that are very slim and ate a lot. And I'm having a conversation with them directly about how can you eat like that and stay slim? Or whether it was me and another overweight person talking about how are they, we know we don't eat that much. How are these other people who eat so much and they stay slim? And so all these years later, it's interesting that I now know the answer. And the answer is that their body is more receptive to insulin to mine. I have insulin resistance. I think some of it's genetic, and I think some of it comes from the way I was raised and the food I was raised on, to where your body becomes resistant to insulin, and it has to pump out even more insulin to get your body to accept glucose. So insulin does several things. Insulin is a hormone, but insulin does several things. But one of the main things it does is it goes up to your muscle cells, and it knocks on the door and says, hey, I have some sugar for you. Would you like it? And you become insulin resistant, and so the cells stop opening the door. And so your body takes a gangster approach and says, you don't refuse me. I'll just send twice the amount of insulin, and we will kick the door down. And so this is an exacerbating process that the more insulin resistant you get, the more insulin you produce, which makes you more insulin resistant, which makes you send out more insulin. And the one interesting thing about high levels of one of the side effects of that is that your body, again, insulin is a hormone. Hormones trigger your body to do certain things. And the insulin hormone triggers your body to retain fat stores. And so that's why when people, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but that's why when people are first diagnosed as being diabetic and they have to go on insulin shots, they immediately start gaining weight, and they're generally overweight till they die, because it's just damn near impossible to lose weight when you have an excess amount of insulin. And so that's the difference. People who eat tons of food, because your body has methods of getting rid of the food you eat. Like you have to really, if you're a metabolically healthy person, you have to eat not just overeat, you have to really overeat for your body to not be able to figure out how to deal with the food, because it just can. It has all these systems in place to deal with it. So metabolically healthy people, their cells are hypersensitive to insulin. They don't need to produce that much insulin. And they eat tons of food, and the body deals with it. It's not a problem. On the other hand, if you're metabolically compromised, you eat tons of food, your body just can't deal with it. You have super elevated insulin all the time, and your body just keeps storing it as fat, just continually stores it as fat, which coincidentally exacerbates the problem by making you hungry all the time. So I've given this example before, but I want you to picture this in your head. Think of fat storage as stealing, okay? Think of your body. You have a hormone that tells your body to store fat, when really, if you were metabolically healthy, your body would be processing that food. It would be processing that energy that you're eating and using it as energy. But instead, your body packs it up in these fat packets and stores it away so you don't get the energy benefit from it. That's why you're still hungry. That's why you're still lethargic. That's why you still have low energy. And a lot of people don't understand this. They're like, God, you eat so much. How can you still be hungry? Well, let's say you're eating 2,000 calories a day and your body is shuttling 500 away and storing it as fat. You don't get the benefit of those 500 calories it shuttles away. So you're really only getting the energy from 1,500 calories. So you're eating 2,000 a day, but from a standpoint of energy to run your body, you're only getting 1,500. That's how you can eat a ton of food and still be hungry all the time. So this is all stuff that I've just learned in the last 8 or 9 months as I've, got turned on to really understanding this. And it's just remarkable to see how everything we've ever been taught about dieting is wrong. So we were talking about what's the difference between Atkins and keto? What's the difference between eating high protein and high fat? So let's go back to it again. So protein doesn't trigger insulin as much as sugar and carbohydrates do, but it does trigger it. So the more you eat, even more it's going to trigger it. And there's a host of other issues that come along with eating high protein. I'm not going to get into all of them, but I will get into the fat aspect of it. When you eat a lot of fat, none of that happens. So you don't get the insulin trigger, you don't get the blood glucose trigger. And then another thing that happens is you become extremely satiated. Fat is the most satiating thing you can eat. So there's 2 reasons the ketogenic diet works so well. One is the metabolic issue, which we've just described. I've just spent several minutes talking about that. The other is the lack of hunger. And when I originally started the ketogenic diet, I really thought the magic was in the metabolic change, the metabolic tweaking of the system that I've just talked to you about. But now that I've been on it this long, I realized that really the most powerful thing about the ketogenic diet is the lack of hunger. You aren't hungry. So I've asked people this before. If you were rarely if ever hungry, do you think you could lose weight? And the answer is always yes. Well, a ketogenic diet is for you. So you want to keep your fat up pretty high. You want to have the percentage of fat you consume at the very minimum should be around 65% to 70%, something like that. So you have to track what you eat to know that. MyFitnessPal is a free app. It'll do it for you. It'll tell you what percentage of your calories today came from fat, what percentage came from carbs, and what percentage came from protein. And so your goal is very simple. Now, it's hard to implement because it's a new way of eating, and it's a minefield of things to navigate. But simplistically, it's easy. You want to keep carbohydrates to 20 or less, so 20 or less carbs a day. Then of everything that's left, you want the most of that to be fat. And when you are at the end of the day and you look at your percentages, the way it'll generally work out for most people, and these numbers will vary a little bit by person, but it'll be about 5% of your calories will come from carbs, 5 or 6, around 5 though. then you'll want, around 20 or 25% to come from protein, and then somewhere in the 75% or something to come from fat. And healthy fats. Not fats that they've told us for years to eat, which is vegetable oils and trans fats. Not that. Healthy fats. Avocado is a healthy fat. Saturated fat is actually a healthy fat, despite what they've told us for the past 4 decades. Coconut oil is a healthy fat. Avocado oil is a reasonably healthy fat. Whole cheeses, it varies by person. I think typically cheese isn't considered keto, but I think that varies by person. Like, I tolerate cheese very well. But this isn't processed cheese. This isn't Cheese Whiz. We aren't talking about Kraft singles that you have been putting on your sandwiches your whole life. I'm talking about real cheese. You find it in the real cheese aisle. Real cheese is generally harder. It's not all soft and mushy. It's hard. Real cheese is hard. So talking about real cheeses like that. So that's generally what you eat. Your day is made up of trying to hit what's called macros, and that's what's called a macro. You have carbs, protein, and fats. Those are your macros. So the point I wanted to make in this podcast today was to talk about sugar, because there seems to be a problem that I've found with talking with people, of people either understanding or accepting that when you're looking at a food label, you don't look at the section that says sugar. Because I was having this conversation with somebody a couple of days ago, and they had some yogurt, and they sent me a picture of it and said, "Can I eat this?" And I'm like, "No, you can't eat that." And they're like, "But it only has 1 gram of sugar in it." Well, it had I don't remember the number, 26 or 28 carbs. And I said, "No, it has 28 grams of sugar in it." Like, "No, it says right there on the label it only has 1 gram of sugar." And so here is the thing that's difficult for people to comprehend. Carbohydrates or sugar, metabolically, when you eat a carb, in whatever form it comes in, it's sugar. Your body, it's just sugar. It's just sugar. I don't know what else to say. It's sugar. It's either going to be glucose or fructose, or there are other kinds of sugars, but it's going to be a sugar. Your body's going to process it as a sugar. It's going to trigger a glycemic response. Your body's going to rush out insulin. I mean, it's just sugar. Carbohydrate is sugar. So when once you get people to understand, I think that's part of the reason some people don't understand why I have to eat low carbs, because they don't understand that you're eating low sugar is what you're eating. But if you say sugar, then people get confused. But you're eating low sugar. You just don't want to eat all that sugar. Carbohydrates are sugar. There's no difference. So if you've listened to some of my other podcasts, you might go in, "Well, you've said there's some difference in carbs, though." Well, technically there are some differences in carbs. You have slow carbs, and then you have unfettered carbs. So slow carbs are the kind of carbs that you actually will eat, because they're good for you. And this will be carbs from eating collard greens, carbs when you eat mustard greens, carbs when you eat turnip greens, without the root, by the way, not the turnip root, just the greens. The carbs that you eat when you're eating broccoli, the carbs when you're eating the cauliflower, the carbs when you're eating the asparagus. So if carbs are sugar, then what is the difference? Why are we saying those carbs are okay? Well, they're okay in limited quantities, but they're okay, one, because those foods are healthy, and it's good to get the micronutrients that are found in those foods. 2, they're slow. So we talked about an insulin response, right? The number one reason, there's 2 big reasons. The 2 huge reasons, I should make it 3, okay. The 3 huge reasons that so many people in America are fat and have metabolic syndrome and are insulin resistant and are either going to be diagnosed type 2 diabetic soon or already have been diagnosed type 2 diabetic soon. Here are the 3 reasons. Okay? Number one, soft drinks. People literally pour liquid sugar down their throat by the liters every day. Okay? And I'll talk about why that one's the worst in just a second. Number two is bread and pasta. We eat bread. Bread and pasta is like the biggest thing on the plate most of the time next to the meat. Well, bread and pasta is just carbs. It's all it is. And it's the worst kind of carbs, again, which I'll clarify momentarily. The third reason is we're eating carbs and sugar that we don't know we're eating. So when you buy those boxes of stuff from the inside of the store aisles, where it's your favorite box of something, cereal's a good example. It's amazing to me that our government allows cereal to be marketed as health food for kids. You see cereal commercials on TV, they're like, oh, God, this is so good for you, and it's packed with 17 vitamins and minerals, and holy crap, this is the way to start the day. Well, flip the box over and see how many carbs are in a serving. In a serving, by the way, now I have noticed, looking at some cereal boxes, that some of them do say a serving is a cup. Most of them, it's still 3/4 of a cup. Now, I don't know if you've ever poured 3/4 of a cup of cereal out, like actually measured it. That is not a meal. Not even for a kid, that's not a meal. Even a cup is not a meal. Like, when I eat cereal, I eat like 3-4 cups at a time. Okay? That was a meal. So, it's just sugar. And so I'm using cereal as an example, but it applies to all those products that you're buying on the middle store aisles. They are just nothing but sugar. That's the reason they taste good. That's the reason you're like, God, this is so good. It's not the vitamins and nutrients that they crammed in there some kind of weird way. It's the sugar that they loaded it up with. And so that's the third problem, is you're eating sugar you don't know you eat. You could ask, I think, the average American, do you eat a lot of sugar? And they'd be like, no, not really. I don't eat that much sugar. Well, that's because they don't know how much sugar they're eating. They don't understand that there's, 38 grams of sugar in this serving size of whatever this boxed or canned or bagged product that they like to eat is. They just don't know that that's what it is. It's mostly sugar. So if you want to know how much sugar that is, a teaspoon of sugar is 4 grams. That's it. So if you're eating something that's 40 grams of sugar, you're eating 10 teaspoons of sugar. Now, if you don't think that's a lot, get you a teaspoon measuring thing and measure out 10 teaspoons of sugar into a bowl. And then imagine that you're probably consuming that in just one meal, And then imagine that that's getting slipped in on you 3 times a day, just in the food you're eating that's on your plate. That's not counting how many grams you're pouring down your throat with the Coke or the Pepsi or the Mountain Dew. So back to the concept of good carbs and bad carbs. So carbs are carbs. Make no mistake about that. But let's compare the carbohydrates in greens in collard greens to the carbohydrates in that can of Coca-Cola that you're drinking. Okay, that Coca-Cola has 0 fiber in it. The sugar was added. It didn't come inherently wrapped in any kind of a fiber package from nature. It was just, as a matter of fact, it was extracted from the fiber package. Cane sugar, and we could talk about high fructose corn syrup. It's a little bit more complicated, but the concept is still the same. I'll use cane sugar because it's simpler to describe. But cane sugar is, I don't know if you ever had a piece of cane or not, but if you're from the South, surely, like when I was young, there was this guy that stripped cane that lived just down the road from us, and my dad used to buy that sugar cane and bring it home, and you chew it, and it's so good. But it's chewy. It's very thick, fibrous, and chewy, and you have to chew and grind and suck on it to get a little bit of that sugar to come out of there. So it's that hard for you to do it with your mouth. Then when you eat some of that fibrous stuff, your body really has to work hard to extract that sugar. And so the sugar just kind of trickles out really slowly over time. Okay, so the sugar that they're putting in your Coke, not only does it not have fiber, it was removed from the fiber. They started with the cane. They ground the cane up, spun it around, blanched it with some kind of chemicals, sucked all the sugar out of it, turned it into some granulated powder. And so they just took the worst part out of the plant and crammed it and then poured it into this beverage. And so when it hits your body, it's literally like shooting sugar up. It's like being a sugar addict. Well, you are a sugar addict, and you really need to recognize that. Two things. Sugar is not a food, and you're addicted to it. The sooner you realize that, the easier it is to get healthy. And I've been trying to tell people that lately, because I think once people understand that they're addicts, like you're an addict, you have a problem. You are addicted to a substance, and it's not food. Sugar is not a food. It has no redeeming qualities. It's just energy. But everything has energy in it. You could literally go walk out of your house and grab anything that you see laying in your yard, laying on the street, growing on a tree. There's literally nothing that you can't grab and pick up that doesn't have energy in it. If you ate it, there would be some level of energy in it. So just because something has energy doesn't make it a food. And that's all sugar is. Matter of fact, the food was removed from the sugar. In the instance of cane sugar, the food was the cane. All you did was extract the pure sugar out of the cane. So let's compare that to people who do cocaine. It's the same thing. You have the plant, which is a plant that you could eat. As a matter of fact, over in certain cultures, they actually do chew on that plant. They get a little bit of a high from it, but they don't wind up addicts and their life shot down the drain because only a little bit of that is coming out when they're chewing the plant. So it's the exact same process. Sugar is made the exact same way cocaine is made. They take a plant that's relatively okay to eat in limited amounts, and they extract the worst part of it out and then megadose you with it. And you're a sugar addict. You're addicted to sugar. You're addicted to a chemical substance that's not food. And we're all, in the entire United States of America, we're addicts. We're all addicts. And that's one reason it makes me sad when people look down on cocaine addicts, crack addicts, heroin addicts, and they're sugar addicts. You're the same. And I'm not saying this in a judgmental way. I was a sugar addict my entire life too. So drinking a soda is like freebasing cocaine. So again, the parallel is very similar. So they've extracted the cocaine is the extract from the plant. It's the pure extract. It's, and 1,000 times the strength of the dose you'd get if you chewed the plant, okay? Sugar, same way. They've extracted sugar from the plant. It's 1,000 times the dose you'd get if you just chewed on the plant. They took that sugar and put it in a soda, stirred it up and dissolved it in liquid, and you just gulp the liquid down 16 and 20 ounces at a time. People freebasing cocaine. They take the cocaine, they put it in the water on the spoon, and they heat it up and dissolve it and melt it in there and shoot it straight into the bloodstream. It's identical. People are shooting up with sugar just like people shooting up with cocaine, and we don't understand why our metabolism is screwed. We don't understand why our body has freaked out and has stopped being able to process food correctly. So, the good carbs. So, obviously, I think it's clear. It's carbs that are wrapped up in fiber. It comes in a whole food form. It's hard to eat enough greens to overeat carbohydrates. You eat a cup or two of greens, and I don't know what you're going to get. 3 or 4 carbs, maybe 5 carbs max, depending on how many greens you eat. And so A, there's not that many carbs in there, and B, the carbs that you are getting, your body has to work hard to extract it from all that fiber, and so you get this trickling effect of carbohydrates. Whereas the minute that Coke goes in your mouth, your body starts absorbing the sugar right through your mouth. It starts absorbing it, and it just goes right on down. It hits your stomach, and bam, you suddenly have a rush of sugar through your bloodstream, just like if you were freebasing Coke. There's just no difference. There's really no difference. So I hope there's a few concepts that you got from the podcast today that will help you. One, understand that you're a sugar addict, and it doesn't make you a bad person. You probably didn't know. I think most people know Coke is nothing but sugar. I mean, if you don't know that, and I'm just picking on Coke, it's all any of the soft drinks. So if you don't know that, maybe you've been in a cave somewhere. But I do think there are a lot of people that don't understand their freebasing sugar when they're eating most of those packages from the center of the store aisles. Those things that come in the nice little boxes or the nice bags or the nice cans or the nice tins. Look at the amount of sugar that are on those that you're getting when you eat it. And then look at the fiber. That's the key. See how much fiber's in it. And so you'll see it'll be like 22 grams of carbs per serving, 1 gram of fiber. It's just not there. Whereas when you eat, you're eating some greens or something, it may be 6 grams of carbs, 4 grams of fiber. So, 60-70% of it is fiber. So that's the difference. So I think it's important to understand that and understand why it wrecks your body. Understand why we're sugar addicts. So I don't want 100% absolve you from your role in it, but to some degree you can be a victim. I feel like I was a victim. I've been a victim of the government who told us the wrong things to eat. I'm a victim of the government who's allowed these foods to be put on store shelves and be called healthy. I mean, the fact that they can put a cereal on TV and call it a great food for kids, for growing kids, it's preposterous. It's just absolutely preposterous that that's even legal. And then the last thing I would say, the reason we're victims, is it's preposterous that sugar is allowed to be called a food. Sugar should be an additive, and it should be regulated as an additive, and there should be limits put on it. Now, I know, and look, I'm a libertarian, and I believe in freedom all the way. But I think there's a difference when it comes to food because people don't understand it. I think for freedom to work, there has to be a knowledge that goes along with the freedom. And nobody understands what sugar does to the system, and nobody understands what normal amounts of sugar are. And so I think being informed with that information, obviously you can do it on your own. But I think it'd be better if we because there are no regulations on sugar because it's classified as a food. And sugar absolutely is not a food. It just isn't. Sugar is not a food. It's a additive that was extracted from a food. In the case of high fructose corn syrup, it was extracted from corn. In the case of cane sugar, it was extracted from cane. But the food was left behind, and you were just left with the extract. And then that extract is used as an additive, and so it's not a food. And so, nevertheless, that's not going to change. The sugar industry is nearly as powerful as the tobacco industry was, and it doesn't matter how much research is out there showing that sugar is killing you, just like there was all that research showing tobacco was killing us. They're so powerful, they're going to beat it. I do think at some point, I don't know if you heard that phone ringing or not, but I apologize. But I do think at some point, we will become so sick, and well, we're already at that point now. I mean, the health crisis in America from sugar now is to the point that it was with the tobacco, when tobacco hit its tipping point with smoking. So I think we're close. So I think we will probably see some things happen soon. But look, you just got to take the bull by the horns. You have to just take control of your health. I've armed you with enough information that just no more than I've told you now, you could start making changes to make your health better. But even do a little bit of research, you could. So the last thing that I would add to the podcast is that we provide all this stuff for free. I don't charge for anything. I can't tell you how many questions I've answered for people. But I do personal coaching where I will coach you one-on-one and answer all the questions that come up along the way where you're like, can I eat this? Or what can I do about this? Or when can I eat some kind of dessert? And what kind of dessert can I eat? And these kinds of things. And from the day to day, and to helping you understand the tracking, because I find that so many people are confused and perplexed by the tracking. And so all these things, I'm happy to help and get you to where you need to be. But that I devote a significant amount of time to that. So that's not something that I can't do without some kind of compensation. But nevertheless, I've tried to make it as affordable as possible considering the amount of time that I invest. And so if you want me to invest in your health, if you want advice from somebody that's lost 110 pounds, if you want somebody that won't just be an informational person, but will be a cheerleader, like I will be here to motivate you. I will get you over the top. You just need to shoot me a message. You can find me on Facebook if you'd like. That's probably the easiest way to get up with me. Or you can just email me. It's fatguy@fatguypodcast, Fat Guy at thefatguypodcast.com. Or you can just find me, the Fat Guy Podcast, or not it's just Fat Guy Podcast on Instagram or on Facebook, and just shoot me a Facebook message. That's the easiest way. I see those the quickest. So add me on Facebook, Fat Guy Podcast. Add me on Instagram, Fat Guy Podcast, and just shoot me a direct message. And if you're interested, and I'd love to work with you and help you achieve your health and weight loss goals and dreams. Remember to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcast, iTunes, the Google Play Store, all that stuff. Subscribe. You'll never miss an episode, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.